This is Transqat, a safe space to stand. Transgender issues, queer people, respectful conversations. I'm host Clare McCarthy. Welcome to Transqat. Welcome to the second in a series of 5 shows celebrating Middletown Pride. My name is Clare McCarthy. I'm the producer and host of Transqat the podcast. You can learn more about me and the show at transqat.com. That's TRANSQAT.com. These 5 programs are a collaborative effort among Transqat, WESU, and Middletown Pride. In addition to this on-air broadcast, you can also find them at the Middletown Pride website, that's middletownpride.org. And finally, you can access a more full version of the conversation at the Transqat website, at our YouTube channel, and everywhere podcasts are available. You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM.
WESU relies on over 100 dedicated student and community volunteers to broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With such a diverse group of volunteer broadcasters, WESU is able to provide airtime to many communities that are least represented on the radio dial in Connecticut. Please make a donation to support WESU online at wesufm.org. Big or small, every donation counts, so please make yours today. Thank you.
Jill, why don't you tell the class what you did this weekend?
Well, my dad and I went in search of some magical minnows and found a zillion of them in the stream from our lookout rock. Then my sister and I escaped from an evil slug king and went back to my super twig fort for safety. Then we told stories till it got dark, and the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Where were you, Jill?
We went to the forest. It's not that far away.
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Today's guests are the Grand Marshals of Middletown Pride 2025, Christopher Fort and Ace Ricker.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Christopher Fort. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Assistant General Counsel for the City of Middletown. Up until this past November, I was the founder and lead organizer of Middletown Pride, and I still am the LGBTQIA+ liaison to the mayor. And I serve as staff to the city's LGBTQIA+ commission.
First of all, congratulations on the appointment as one of the 2 Grand Marshals for this year. Let's talk a little bit of history. So you were the impetus behind Middletown Pride, as I understand it. You went to the then mayor, and this would have been when?
This was the summer of 2018. Actually, no, I lied. It was March of 2018. Oh. Because I wanted to. My initial goal was not to create state's largest pride. It was just to have a pride flag fly at City Hall, which until 2018 we had never done. So in March of that year, I went to Mayor Dan Drew and I asked him. I said, "Hey, could we fly the pride flag during the month of June?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." And it turns out that the entire city loved it, and the mayor received so much positive feedback from so many people, like overwhelmingly positive from residents, businesses, everybody you can think of. And so that really made an impression on him. And then that led to further conversations in August of 2018, where the mayor called me into his office this time and said, "Hey, Chris, I would really love it if you could found a pride for the city of Middletown." And at the time, I was sort of like, well, I planned my wedding, which was 160 people, and wow. I don't know that I'm qualified to plan an event on behalf of the whole city.
That's 160 people sounds like skill in event planning, Chris.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah, but I've never been a community planner. I've never was an event organizer. I've never had any experience with that. I'm just, I'm a lawyer for the city of Middletown. And so I was really taken aback. And then I was like, well, if the city wants me to do this, I'm going to do it. And that's when we started, getting everything together.
What was the climate like in Connecticut overall back in 2018? I know since then, certain towns and cities have gotten into squabbles about whether or not they're going to fly a pride flag. And And it seems now that almost every small community in Connecticut has its own wee tiny Pride celebration. But what were things like overall in 2018?
Yeah, so 2018 was just sort of on the precipice of all of that. Prides were happening. There weren't a ton of prides in Connecticut. I think there was probably like 10 maybe or so. But I would say like after Middletown Pride started and it was such a huge success, suddenly in the next few years, you saw prides popping up all over the state. Now there's over 50 prides in the state of Connecticut. It's really quite something. And so, yeah, so the event, I would say the atmosphere in the state was sort of like, we need something. We need a lot of things. And like I said, it was sort of on the precipice of excitement of all this sort of stuff bubbling up and starting to happen.
So we get the flag raised outside City Hall. You start putting together this Pride. That first year, what were numbers like for you?
So our first Pride back in 2019. So first, let me just go back a little bit because I think it's really important for people to know how we sort of started. Because I always say Middletown Pride is a unicorn. There's not many other, if any, wholly city-run prides. Right? Like when you have a pride, it comes from, one of our community centers, or it comes from a group of dedicated people saying, hey, I want this. And like they go and get a permit from their town, right? Here at Middletown Pride, this is a city event. This is our government saying, we support this. We want this to happen. So being mindful of that, I was just one person back in 2018. So I thought, okay, how do we make sort of structural change here in the city? And so I created the city's first LGBTQ task force. That task force just had one goal. The only goal was to create Middletown Pride. So the mayor appointed and the common council confirmed, I think 9 people at the time, all members of the community, to be on that task force and come up with what we wanted Pride to be. Now, of course, I had like my ideas. I've been to Prides all over the country, and I was like, okay, I like this from Boston. I like this from DC. I like this from New York. How can we make it, pretty great here at Middletown? And so the task force was up and running by November, just because government runs slow. So it took us a little bit to set it up. But basically from November to February, 2019, we came up with an idea. We went to the Common Council for funding. We asked for, I think, $55,000 to run the entirety of our Pride. And it ended up being a 3-hour public hearing before the Common Council, where so many members of the community came out to support and to say why having a Pride would be important. It was honestly one of the most beautiful moments in public service.
Now, given the current climate, when you said it was a 3-hour hearing, I expected you to follow that sentence with, a line of people adamantly opposed, but the opposite, right?
Yeah. No, I was bracing. I was ready for the hate, for the detractors, for everyone to come out, but the opposite happened. And like I was saying before, it was honestly one of the most beautiful moments in public service that I've had in my entire career of, almost, 14 years of doing this now. And it was just so wonderful to see that many people come out and all say the things that I agree with and that I identify with and I love, and that you just want to hear people speaking like truth and power to government, and they did. And so the Common Council that night voted to award us our funding. And then from February to June, it was the longest sprint of my life. And we got everything together and everything in order. So 15,000 people came out in our very first year. And it was just absolutely incredible.
Now, generally speaking, and I've been at most of the Middletown Prides. Generally speaking, there are 3 major components. You've got the parade, you've got the vendors, and then you've got a rally on the common. We talked about a lot of the specifics of how you get that in place when Bree was on. But from your perspective, did you, at that point, you had a committee to work with? You had other people besides yourself?
Yeah, so the task force existed the whole time. And in 2021, we expanded the task force to an entire commission because it was really obvious kind of from the get-go that there were a lot of things that people in Middletown wanted our task force to do that was beyond the scope of just doing a Pride. And so we got more people involved and broadened the scope of it. But I will say, just going back to sort of your question of, how we got the framework of Pride, is it really was, it's what the task force wanted, but it's also really what I wanted. It was sort of the template that I was hoping for. Our first year, we were kind of just excited to do it. So we had our Pride. At the time, it was called a parade. Now it's called a march. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But we had our parade and a show. And then as we sort of became a thing, right, after our first year and we had our second Pride Fest and third, there was the culture around prides really was changing. And we were experiencing a big backlash to prides from the LGBTQIA plus community itself. Because they were saying, like in the bigger cities, like New York, Boston Pride completely folded. New York City Pride had counter programming because they were saying, like, look, all these corporations come in and they buy floats and they support and they say that they support the community. And then 363 days out of the year or 364 days out of the year, they don't do anything else for us. So what are they really doing, right? And it was really a backlash to make Pride more meaningful. So I took a really long, hard look at what we were doing. And I looked what they were doing, and sort of in 2021 and 2022, I started reshaping Middletown Pride to echo and to, be what people wanted prides to be, right? So then you saw us get a lot more intentional with, it's not just a parade, it's a Pride March. And in our Pride March, the first half of it is the groups and organizations that do the work all year, the LGBTQ organizations that do the work, that are here for us in the community all year. Because, I always say I have to beat people over the head with a 2x4 sometimes, but it literally is Pride is a demonstration first and a celebration. So we wanted to really mimic that, right? And so our Pride March first is our demonstration. This is the people that do the work. And then the second half is the fun. It's the floats. It's the organizations that want to be there. It's the music. It's, all the fun things that people come out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do have, now I don't know if this was the case in 2019 for the first one, but I mean, you have the Russell Library behind you. You have Middlesex Health there in Middletown. You have organizations that, at least for somebody who doesn't live in Middletown, I consider, very openly supportive places, and they're on board with you. Are there others that we should mention?
Yeah, so as of last year, we have our newest partner, Middlesex Health. They joined us last year as a full-blown partner of Pride as well. And of course, the city of Middletown and the Middlesex County Chamber of Commerce are our other partners as well. And sort of just going back, like when we were starting this, I intentionally got all these organizations and groups on board, and I wanted to make them partners. And I wanted it to be very intentional because, at just starting a Pride, like, well, what if we get a common council that doesn't give us money? What if we get a mayor that doesn't want to support and doesn't want it to keep going, right? So no matter what happened in any election, my thought was I want us to be sort of too big to fail. I want us to have safeguards and be so entrenched in the community that people are going to be so upset, if we didn't exist. And so that was sort of the goal from the beginning, was to make this sort of, like I said, sort of too big to fail almost, where it's like we have such buy-in from the community and you see what a beautiful, impactful event it is. It's like you'd be hard pressed to get rid of it.
Well, as fate would have it, you initiate this thing and then we go into lockdown, March of 2020, and Middletown Pride, along with all other public events, gets put on hold. And when you guys came back, there was a very palpable feeling in the crowd of, oh, thank goodness, this is back. There was a real sense of appreciation for it, more so than any other Pride that I've been to, where it felt like, okay, we've been holding our breath for a long time, and this needs to be back here.
Yeah, and believe me, I was holding my breath too. It was such a hard decision to say in 2020, because like we didn't know all the information. We were looking at, I was looking at the news every day being like, okay, are vaccines going to be announced? Are there going to be enough? Is it going to be safe? And it's at the end of the day, I just couldn't have a massive event that could harm our community, that could spread disease, and just like I just couldn't do it. And so it was like going back, it was a super hard decision. But there's the silver lining sort of in everything, right? Like the pandemic was terrible and really just awful, but it really made us rethink and again, go to the next level of being extra intentional on things. we started having virtual programming, which we never did before. We started expanding our programming for community events and, educational events and seminars and things that we just haven't done before. Because we're like, there's a lot of different ways. There's not just, we don't have to just be one big day. Like, we can be an all year thing.
You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM.
And so, that retooling happened in the wake of the pandemic.
And it's rare in an annual event that you get that time to reflect. I mean, it's usually part of the sprint, right? Is as you're going along, making sure the infrastructure is in place. It's okay. Is there anything we want to rethink this year? Anything we can build on the fly? COVID allows for a little bit of, okay, well, yeah, what would virtual programming look like? What would more outreach during the rest of the year look like?
One was just so starved for connection.
Yes.
It's like, what can we get up there? What can we get to help people? What can we get to help ourselves? Like the organizers of Middletown Pride, like I'm a person too, like we're people too. Like I need this just as much as everybody else does. So it's like, how do I get with people? How do I get with community? How do we start doing this? It was a weird time.
So first year, I don't know if we got there. First year, what were your numbers?
So our first year was 15,000.
What was Middletown Pride last year?
We had an attendance of 35,000 people last year.
Yeah. So essentially the population of the Boston Marathon plunked into Main Street.
Downtown Middletown.
Yeah.
Yep. I know. It's incredible. And, going back to our first year, I remember, we stayed up until midnight at the chamber the night before our very first Pride. And me and the whole team are sitting there trying to get signage out and paperwork done and everything together and organized and, merchandise organized and there's everything where it should be. And we stopped and at the end of the night and we're having like a glass of wine and we're like, do we think people are going to come? And I said, I think if 1,000 people come, like this will be just like an incredible event. It'll be such a success. I never usually use crowd size as a metric for success or anything, but I was like, if we can get like a good number of people, like about 1,000 people, that should be great. And then the next day, all of a sudden I'm walking down Main Street in the Pride March and you just see, I feel like every step you took, there was just astronomically more people on each side of the road. And you just start crying. It was just such an unbelievable feeling to see that many people come out to support.
One of the things that I've been seeing at Prides recently is our shirts and banners that say Pride is protest. Because obviously the first, in 1970, the first Pride parade was in the wake of, and in the anniversary of, I believe, the Stonewall riots. And then, as you were talking about a little bit along the way, Pride got corporatized and it got, there were prides this must be family friendly. So you can't have anything that might be off color. And Pride morphed into something else. But now we're in a climate where the queer community is being attacked again, openly and forcefully. There's fear of deportations. There's legislation being passed against people like me. So that sense of protest, how are you making sure that is prominent in 2025?
Yeah. So if I can answer, just go back just a little bit sort of again, just kind of like how we got here too. My guiding principle was Pride is both a demonstration and a celebration, because you need different things at different years. It's been so interesting over the last 7 years to see the years where the celebration is more important to the community, and in the years where the demonstration and the protest is more important to the community, because we really do need both, and it really does sort of ebb and flow, right? And yeah, like you said, we are definitely now in a time, under the current administration, where the protests, where we're fighting for equal rights, where we're protesting the federal government and sometimes the state governments and things like that. And all I can think of right now is thank God that we have things like Middletown Pride. We have organizations all over the state. We have 50 prides all over the state now to be there for our community when we're feeling lost, hopeless, sad, like we need to do something. So over the years, to make sure that we got both the celebration and the demonstration into our pride, right? So the like I said before, the intentionality with the Pride March, that it's not just a parade, right, as some people like to call it, but
right.
We do have it is a march, it is a protest, and then we also have our rally now, which we started in 2022. So we have our Pride rally where we invite LGBTQ legislators, members of the government, community activists. We have our Pride rally where we think it's so important to be able to give our community a microphone. I always say, like, if you give me a microphone and 35,000 people to talk to, I'm going to educate them. I'm going to protest. I'm going to speak truth to power. We're going to hear from our community. And over the years, it's been just so wonderful to see that opportunity, because for so long and in so many places, members of our community don't get to speak. We get silenced, right? We don't get the opportunity to be heard. Frankly, Middletown Pride and our events and our kickoff event and at our rally are some of the few times like we're like, look, talk to our community, talk to the 35,000 people that are present. I think it's really wonderful.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to also bring into the discussion is that, we've been talking about Pride as an event for the community to celebrate, to come together and network and feel a sense of community. But what, in your opinion, what do prides in general and Middletown Pride in particular offer for allies and folks who are not adamantly opposed to us, but who might want to, just who are open to being educated, let's say?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, because I think that's one of the areas where Middletown Pride has just really excelled. I could tell pretty early on that we were a lot of people's very first Pride. A lot of people never would go seek out, like, New York City or Boston or DC Pride or Philly Pride or anything like that. They know they exist, but it's sort of not in their life, and they've never really been exposed to it. And in, talking with people over the years, we were a lot of people's very first Pride. And what's really beautiful about that is the reaction to that is, oh my God, this is amazing. And I don't know why I was scared of the LGBTQ plus community. They're not that different. They just want what we have. They want to do the same things that we do, right? And it really has changed people's minds and made people more accepting and more tolerant. And what's amazing is some friends of mine, they have kids, and it was their kids' first Pride, and now both of those kids have come out since then, over the years. And it's really wonderful that, like, our friends' kids got to be safe and feel comfortable from when they were very little in a space that, I sort of created, and so that was just really meaningful to me. But yeah, I mean, just generally, it's the reaction from people that are not members of the LGBTQIA plus community has been really just phenomenal. It's been really wonderful.
One of the things that the vendor setup allows as well is to see that we're small business owners. We, as well as, there are usually larger law firms or healthcare organizations and religious organizations. There are churches and faith leaders there. And so for somebody who needed to see that this is more than drag queens on a float, people have been coming to me as I set up there and with my recording gear, and most of what I'm doing is queer people telling their stories, but I get people, coming in and just wanting to talk and saying, oh, my son, he came out and I'm not sure what to do. And I think I think it does offer a chance for education, for reasonable conversations with folks that maybe you wouldn't otherwise be crossing paths with. And
Yeah, and going back to your comment, you said people realize it's not just drag queens. It's like, yes, and the people see the drag queens and the other performing artists, and they go, oh, this is great.
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize this was so great. And you're like, yeah, I know, this is what we've been saying this whole time. But the other side of me too is, I said before, like, I'm a person in the community too, where like, I need this, I need Middletown Pride just as much as everybody else. And I can't help but think, I grew up in an area of the state where it was unsafe, where it was not good to be a member of the community. I had to change the way I walk, change the way I talk, change, the things I was interested in, just to sort of fit in. I was terrified of being out or outing myself accidentally, right? And, and I had it good compared to a lot of my friends, right? And a lot of people, the things that people do experience. But I can't help but wonder, like, if I had this in my town growing up, like, my family life would have been different. My whole life would have been better and different and everything. We're unfortunately living in a time again where there is that sense of fear, more acutely now than in the past few years. And there is like actual palpable, the government is coming after the community. And that's why I said before, like, thank God we have Middletown Pride now. We have things like this. So we're just not going to disappear. We're just going to, we have the outlets and the sort of more of an infrastructure in place than we used to. And so we can build on that and keep using that to, hopefully create some sort of positive change, at least locally, and hopefully more,
So my final question, I'm going to toss this out there, and we got two questions left, but my final question is going to be a quiz. So get your pencil ready.
Okay.
Penultimate question, though, is you were saying before we start, look at that, your Middletown Pride pen. Very nice. I have one of those as well. One of the things we were talking before we started rolling is that there have been some changes in the structure at Middletown Pride for 2025. Bree was on the show laying out some of that, but tell me about, from your perspective, what some of these changes might mean for this year's Pride.
Yeah, sure. So as many of you all know, I stepped down from being the lead organizer of Middletown Pride in August of last year. And so since that time, we've been able to transition leadership of the organization to Brianna Scovera, who has really hit the ground running and done wonderful things. I'm still around assisting in sort of an advisory role just to make sure, things continue to happen and nothing gets sort of like lost in translation. But like, it's all coming together beautifully. Brianna is absolutely amazing. I'm so proud that she gets to lead Middletown Pride through this Trump administration and through these times. I think she's really going to excel and be really wonderful at it.
She is a force.
Yeah, she is. And I can't wait to see what she does. I think from the outside, it's going to seem like Middletown Pride really hasn't skipped a beat. People are going to continue to enjoy it. It's going to be just as wonderful, if not better, than it was in the past. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. And it's really nice to not have to be the one that does absolutely everything. And now I get to be Grand Marshal and be honored and go on all these interviews, and it's really wonderful and great.
I'm guessing that the night before Pride, you'll sleep a little better this year than you have since 2018.
It's like every year people come up to me at Pride and they go, Chris, are you having fun? And I said, no, I'm not having fun. I'm having fun at Pride. But now I've been telling everybody I'm so excited to have fun at Pride.
All right. So here's your last question in the form of a quiz.
Oh, no.
This year, 2025, the Grand Marshals are you and Ace Ricker, who will also be joining us in the second half of this program. Can you name all the other marshals from the previous years?
Oh, boy. All right. Year one, we had Raven Mathern and Sapphire, Madison Sapphire Duquesne.
Okay. Now, who are they for folks who are not?
So Raven Mathern was Connecticut's first out trans elected official out of Stamford, Connecticut. They were a town manager, like board of selectmen. So they were the very first elected trans official in the state. Madison was a local performing artist, a local drag performing artist that helped with our first year getting everything together. So
that's 2019,
2019. Right? 2020, we picked some Grand Marshals, and then we were canceled due to COVID. 2021, we had, I believe that year it was Mel Cordner and Kenya Monhart. So Mel we all know, is the head of Q+, and is a wonderful human. And Kenya Monhart was, again, a local drag performer who was really wonderful and amazing and is super talented. Year 3, oh boy.
So that's 2021. So now we're looking at 2022.
Yep.
Right?
2022.
Or were you off for 2 years?
We were off for 1 year.
Okay. So 2022.
Yep. Was Mia Easylay, a local drag performance icon. And
you're allowed to come back. This is like the SATs. If you finish the section, you can go back.
Yeah. Oh, it was Kimora Harrington. Yes, who was wonderful. And, she leads an organization out of Hartford, Kimora's Cultural Corner, that is just inspirational, incredible for the community. And I think I got those years mixed up. I think 2021 was Mia and Kimora. And then 2022 was Mel and Kenya. So then we're up to 2023. And we got Hella Swag, who also works at the city of Middletown and is a dear friend and also a really iconic performing drag queen. Mm-hmm. And then we got Carly C. Webb, who is absolutely electric and amazing and wonderful. And I just love her so much. And she really, both her and Hella as Grand Marshals were just chef's kiss.
I did a show with 3 of the folks from Free Mom Hugs. And
yes.
One of them was saying how that speech from Carly on the stage that day changed the way she approached advocacy for the queer community. And she was so passionate about the way Carly had sort of put herself out there, the way Carly does.
Oh, yeah. She's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
So that's 2023, 2024.
So last year, for the first time, we had 3 Grand Marshals. We had Ethel Deluxe, who is a drag artist, ASL interpreter. You'll see them, doing sign language and ASL interpretation during our rally and during some of the performances. She does it in drag, which is really amazing. We had Shanae Fulton, who is a local author, a small business owner, and on the Planning and Zoning Commission in Middletown. So she's a really great member of our community. And then Tony Ferriolo, who everybody knows, loves, and is, again, iconic and amazing himself.
Been on the show many, many times.
Yes. I just read his new book, which was incredible. We've had a long line of really amazing people
So you're in good company.
I'm in excellent company. I'm very honored.
Send us out on some words of hope, if you would.
So one of the things, that I wanted to mention is, like I said, I'm a lawyer. I didn't get any training to do this, to set up Middletown Pride. And so, now we're in a time where being involved matters and showing up for your community matters. And it's imperative to do so because, we're all at risk, right? Like an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. So whatever that means to you, whatever being involved means to you, I can safely say if I can do it, anybody can do it. There's no secret sauce here. There's no special knowledge that only certain people get. If you want to start something, start it. If you want to get involved and run some events, run some events. If you're lucky enough to be able to donate, money and resources, do that.
Volunteer.
Volunteer your time, be involved, come to our commission meetings, create your own pride, do whatever you need to do, whatever it looks like for you. But I think just the days of standing aside are over. And I think people need to get involved. And, I started Middletown Pride because no one else was doing it. I went to the mayor because I was literally here in City Hall. Representation matters, right? And, I ran Pride because nobody else was doing it. So do it. Start it. And that's sort of my plea, for everybody is we can all do this. We can all make a difference in our corner of the world. We can make change. And it's in doing that, we make our lives better. So please just get involved and do that. And everyone will thank you for it.
You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM.
What other media source brings you such a stimulating and provocative mix of news and public affairs from NPR and Pacifica alongside independent sources, in addition to providing a home for hard-to-find specialty freeform music programs? Help WESU understand what programs you value most, and help close out our Spring Pledge Drive with a donation today. so WESU can wrap up our fiscal year with a balanced budget and get back to the good stuff. WESUFM.org/pledge.
Come to the forest. It's a place not so far away where you don't have to mow the lawn or babysit. Ask your parents to take you to where the other you lives. But first, stop by discovertheforest.org, brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
So, Ace Ricker, he, him pronouns. I've been a public advocate and educator for the last 20 plus years, doing political and public testimonials and education work throughout New England and the U.S. As an open multiracial trans man, really navigating and facilitating and holding conversations with individuals on a vast variety of different topics, everything from suicide, LGBTQ plus awareness, assisting with open and affirming churches through their process, navigating the different generations of trauma, technology change, as well as just holding certain conversations that we still find are stigmatized, and everyone wants to really navigate the dialogue but doesn't want to be judged on starting the dialogue. Yeah. And that's where I say, when you open conversation and continue conversation, we build dialogue. And that's really where I started my stance and just activism and my work as a young trans individual. When I was younger, there was no visibility. There was no one I saw in the spaces around me that really said, I am part of this community. And I didn't want other generations to feel that same way growing up, as well as those who may not see visibility as adults.
So you're working with organizations, with, you mentioned, church groups, schools, I'm assuming, what, corporate stuff as well, or?
All of the above. There, okay. Everything from healthcare facilities, nonprofits, schools, different type of medical facilities, municipality staff, libraries, you name it. I really don't have a boundary on where I go. I mean, I was very fortunate last year to help reconstruct an employee handbook for a pet store, so I got to see all the cute animals while doing the work. So it really expands, and I feel that all those subjects and all that dialogue can be effective and received well. And I do pretty much most of my work interactively in workshops to all different individuals, whether it's based in school or a pet store or whatnot, really to bring conversation about and continue those conversations.
What are you finding in the last 100 days, since the sorts of conversations that you want to initiate and that you want to have continue, they've been demonized, they've been weaponized, so that there's this active attempt to eliminate and erase anything that's DEI related, particularly anything about us trans people?
I have seen an ebb and flow. I see that there are moments when the fear-mongering really grabs a hold of individuals and it stops them in their tracks, to the taking that fear and really refacing it into energy and encouragement and empowerment to say, why can't I be in this community, and why am I not allowed in this community, and I'm no different than you in other ways. And so my work has expanded in some places. I have noticed some spaces that, and which is a good thing in some regards, some spaces that kind of were like the silent corner, that were like, well, it's not our lane, it's not our space. Yeah. We're not against you, but we're just not gonna vocalize that, have really started to come out in a lot of different ways. And that, I think, has been a very encouraging thing, because with the amount of heaviness and fear-mongering and just really direct, in your face hatred, racism, transphobia, homophobia, the list goes on and on and on. For me, it fuels my fire, and I'm glad to see that even with a lot of this heaviness that's going on within our country, that people are using that heaviness and saying, we got it, and we're all going to work hard to carry this out and do better.
The climate brings out a number of people within those groups, people who might be allies. They're now going to be a little bit more afraid to ask a question on two fronts. They're afraid they might ask something that offends you, and you push back against that, but also that they're probably aware that at least some of their coworkers are actively opposed to us, and they need, we're gonna come in and talk to you, but then we're gonna go home. And you need to stay there and work with these people. So in terms of that dynamic, in terms of the individuals in the group, what are you seeing?
I definitely agree that within this year, dialogue in general, whether it's talking about the queer community, the trans community, immigrants, whatever community we're talking, there's the floor of eggshells. People are, I don't want to say overly cautious, but to the extent where we're just not talking at all, or it's in these whispers, and there's no real dialogue. It's kind of a statement, and then it just is like, oh, but we really don't worry about it. Never mind. Us as individuals, whether we're talking about stuff that is unknown to us or stuff that we navigate every day in our lives, at points we're going to be walking on eggshells because we are always expanding. We're always learning.
That sort of commonality, I think, is something that we need to cultivate. All of us who are the targets of what's going on in Washington right now, I think we need to constantly recognize our common ground and stand on it together.
Yes, and with looking at that common ground, not try to pick and choose which one is in more detriment or not. We're not trying to rate each other.
Right.
We really need to unify and say, this is unequitable, this is unfair, these are ways that we shouldn't be treating anybody, and working together to really cultivate and communicate and strengthen what hatred is out there, what dialogue is just blatantly skewed to cause people to not start conversations, and
Right.
to really tiptoe in to, like, what, where did you get that idea, or where was that concept brought to you? Because I know that I wrote an article very recently about reactive versus active listening, where even in safer spaces, if it's something that makes us feel kind of not really sure, we immediately go into our rebuttal phase, and we go into our head, and we're like, okay, when so and so's finished, I have exactly what I'm going to say. And by doing that, we're not listening to what they're saying.
You are listening to WESU Middletown 88.1 FM.
Right.
And when we start our dialogue, they're going to be like, were you listening at all, Ace, to me? Really pulling out, like, being active listeners is something us, as myself included, really have to get back to, because with this climate, with technology, we have so much accessibility to just swipe right. Next article. Read the first few. Next article, and we don't process. We aren't processing, and we become so reactive. We have forgotten in a lot of ways how to sit in discomfort, to learn how to be comfortable in not being comfortable. Now, we also, when saying that, really have merged vulnerability and safety. If there's something vulnerable, we as individuals automatically feel, our safety is compromised, let's end it. And I could be sitting in a room with friends and I'm like, there is nothing, I am perfectly safe. Yes, I might not know the dialogue. I'm ignorant in many different ways. That doesn't mean for me to just shut down because I'm like, the little alarm bells go off. And we as individuals just have started to do that because we're all burnt out.
Yeah.
And we are just in this, like, fight or flight mode. And I really try to pull individuals back and say, hey, these conversations, whether it's with your coworkers, whether it's with your family members, whether it's with your friends, go in it with understanding that the conversation is in good intent, and that maybe the impact of that comes off a little bit different, but know that the intent is good and we can build that intent to good impact.
When you say active listening, maybe a quick couple of words on what does that mean?
For active listening, it's very much so our defense mechanism, where if we are having a conversation, walking into a different environment, it is our immediate response or reaction when dialogue is brought up to us or a space that is unknown to us, kind of immediately puts that wall up. One of the easiest examples I can use now, which when we turn on the television, if it immediately associates a Democrat or a Republican or one particular climate-based thing, it immediately, oh, I already know where this is going. Or I immediately turn the channel because I already have these assumptions or these feelings. And it's sometimes the unconscious bubbling. One thing I learned is for a period of time when I would drive through my neighborhood and anywhere and would see the American flag, I would start getting defensive because the American flag I have associated to be weaponized against me as a trans individual, to not be allowed in the service, to at points not be able to get a job or do certain things or have discrimination against me. And that imagery caused internal walls. Sometimes this can be individuals walking into a room and seeing no one they know. And they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to be listening in this room and not really have a voice. And there's always this assumption. And usually reactive listening is based on an assumption or bias that we have had imprinted in us since our younger years, maybe as adults, and how it truly affects how we're responding and how we disconnect as a listener.
So that's reactive. Active is I'm working to turn that switch off for a little while, maybe.
Yeah, to turn the oh, I'm going into overthinking. Wait, I need to think about that rebuttal. Active listening is saying, like, even in this dialogue, it's saying, I asked the question to this individual. I am giving them the floor. And even if I'm thinking possibly about the laundry I didn't do yet, I'm going to be like, Ace, nope, recenter yourself to what Claire is saying. Recenter yourself. And that may take time. Like, we as individuals often have so many, the hamster's going. I mean, the wheel doesn't stop anymore, it seems. And we really need to slow the wheel down and really focus on the key point of what we're doing instead of drifting away into daydreaming or the immediate rebuttal that, well, I can't wait till Claire stops talking because I want to give my point.
Because I've got a zinger.
And I'm going to, there's an acronym you can use, which is WAIT, which is why am I talking? That can really navigate that, as well as one of those, the power of the pause. We as individuals overall are terrified of silence. Silence means something's wrong, that something's about to happen, and sometimes we need that pause to be able to process, to gather our thoughts, to think, to let it actually sink in so we can think about what we just heard instead of, I already know what's coming and I have a response.
I liken it to the rules of improv comedy. So if you and I are in a conversation together, I need to be listening to what you're saying. I need to be really present with that because whatever comes out of my mouth next needs to build on that. I need to, so whatever it is you say, I can't say, no, that's not true. This is what's going on. I need to build on what you say and say, yes. And I don't know why the goats are on the lawn.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, in order to react properly to you, I have to be listening and processing that. And then you're doing the same while I'm talking.
I think that is an excellent. I might have to borrow that, Claire.
Please. Yeah.
I think that's excellent. If we're thinking about like whose line is it anyway, you have to be so focused, and that's what is happening. And that's a perfect example. Some of us we are just mad libbing dialogue now, and then everyone's like, that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? And we just walk away, just like, A, laughing about how idiotic it sounds, or annoyed as hell because we're like, I just wasted my time for the last hour trying to have this dialogue and it got nowhere.
Well, social media trains us to do that, right? That
Yes.
it's not built for real dialogue, for real conversation. It's built for the zinger.
Yes.
Who can ping out the catchiest thing, the meanest thing, whatever it is that's going to get shared,
Mhm.
and that's antithetical to real conversations.
We have amplified the popularity competition, the high school popularity competition with who can get the deeper jab, who can get the most likes. We really lose the concept that reality sometimes is boring. Reality sometimes is hard. Reality sometimes challenges us again and again and again. And it's not just beaches and parties and we are strong as individuals because of those challenges and those obstacles that we have had to come to enjoy those beaches, to enjoy those parties.
Yeah, you're looking at a snapshot, not a movie.
Exactly.
So what, both in terms of the trans journey and the journey towards this education, communication, advocacy career that you've built, what brought you to that?
Where it very much so started out was very young. I was born in Dominican Republic. I was adopted. My dad is full Italian. My mom is French Canadian, Swedish, and Polish. I am only one of two people in my adopted family that are people of color. I grew up in Huntington, Connecticut, or Shelton, Connecticut, and was one of three people of color in my class. At third grade, I already knew I was different in some way or shape or form, but I really didn't have the terminology, really didn't have the dialogue at that point. And I remember going to recess. Like kids love recess, and I remember by third grade in recess, I stopped going to recess because I was criticized to be the quote unquote girl who was playing with all the guys and not doing girly things or not acting appropriate for what young ladies should act like or young girls should be doing. And I'm like, we all can kick a ball around. It's not like
Was
we
that now, did you feel that that was coming from the other kids or from the grown-ups?
both.
Really?
And I think a lot of the responses I was getting from other young kids my age were mimicking and imitations of the behaviors that their parents and surrounding adults had. Be the bully or be the one bullied.
Yeah.
And there's not one or the other. There's so much outside of those two options. Yet us as humans usually really isolate ourselves to that, especially in vulnerable situations. And I remember by third grade, I just was like, was being criticized about the way I dressed. I had longer hair. I had it always put up because it was always in my face and it just was annoying and it was hot and heavy and all that jazz. And I was more tomboyish because the clothes were comfortable. Like, let's be honest. Young girls and women's clothes are made for the opposite sex to enjoy what they're wearing and not to be comfortable. So I shut off a lot in ways. I became a loner because everything that I enjoyed doing or how I generally was acting was stigmatized as wrong. And I remember I would have dialogue specifically like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And you would have the quick response of, "Oh, well, I want to be an astronaut," or "Oh, I want to be in the army," or "Oh, I want to be a doctor or a police officer or whatnot." And I would respond very quickly to just eliminate the question because oftentimes the true answer was to be seen, to know that I was going to see myself in the future, that I had a future, because at that point, even as a young kid, I didn't see myself in the space, whether it was due to my skin color, whether it was due to my gender identity, because I didn't have the terminology, yet I still was like, huh. And by fifth grade, navigating puberty, I remember we'd be divided up by the boys and the girls, and I'm walking with these girls, and I'm like, shouldn't I be in the other? There were so many things as young kids. We were asking questions and not getting answers. Oh, don't worry about that. You don't need to know that. You're too young to know that. If I'm asking you the question, clearly I've thought about this dialogue. And I think us as adults, when we all used to be kids, kind of just shut off that like aspect of we were in that same position wanting answers and not getting answers. And that started that journey, that started that spark, because there were so many things that I was not getting answers for. And I was like, I can't be the only one.
I think you're absolutely right. When you find out that people don't want to have those conversations, you either become the disruptor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna dedicate myself to asking these questions, starting dialogues, trying to find answers,
Yeah.
or you become the defender of the status quo. This is the way we do things in this community. We do not ask questions. We
Yeah.
do not try to disturb the status quo.
Yes. And even navigating that, if you are going to be the disruptor, it's gonna suck. There's gonna be hurdles you're gonna navigate. You're gonna deal with people that are gonna put you down, and then no one speaks up. And that speaks in volumes to that one person who is there now navigating this uncomfortable, possibly triggering event, that if one person spoke up, even maybe not even engaging in the direct conflict, but just saying, hey, I saw what just happened, and I'm sorry that you just had to deal with that. I mean, we see stats like this. I mean, Trevor Projects did this for trans individuals. One affirming adult for youth minimizes the chance of suicide by 40%. One. That's where it started. I said, I dealt with physical, verbal harassment, whether it was my curly, frizzy hair or being a fluffier young individual or doing things that were not part of the quote unquote gender norms. Why are we so inflated in disagreement because of me kicking a soccer ball around? What's wrong with that? It started off young. I mean, I started trying navigating phone banks at 11, 12 years old, and then with the anti-discrimination bill, the House Bill 6599, that passed in 2013, I assisted each year doing public testimonial for that. And when I got into public testimonial, it brought me into this environment that I wanted, needed, and was looking for, because it actually started answering questions for me. Individuals started actually responding to my questions, and I'm just like, he'll figure it out later. Don't worry about it. And I couldn't get enough. And now, doing this for now the 20 plus years, I still can't get enough of it, because I live by, I'd rather you ask than assume. Because assumptions lead to harm. And us, especially in U.S. society, when we cause harm, it's even harder to get back to that dialogue. It's even harder to say, my bad, I did something and I might take responsibility for it. What should I have done? Most of the people truly, when I sit down in front of me, even if I know we have vast differences of opinions, we sit down actively listening to each other and not yelling. Because when we're more reactive, we just our voices get louder, and there's just noise in a room.
Yeah.
And nothing is being said, and no one is being heard. If I can offer a space to young adults, to medical physicians, to teachers, to therapists, to be a sounding board to navigate dialogue, I am 100% willing to and ready to. And I always say, this is my story and my story alone. I do not speak for an entire community. I speak only for myself. And remember that these answers I give you are not the answers that you may get from another trans individual or another person of color. but to know that there is some similarities and familiarities that individuals can start connecting to really plants the seeds, starts that process, and it continues that conversation.
What you're describing is fantastic in that it's exactly what you said your younger self wanted when you grew up. You by this testimony, you are being seen. And in facilitating dialogue, you are making sure that both parties in the conversation are being seen, are being heard, that there's actual connection going on there. We should talk about Middletown. You have been selected as one of the 2 Grand Marshals for the 2025 Middletown Parade and Festival. But tell me about what this means to you.
The ability to be a Grand Marshal and to be trusted and to hold a space, I am entirely honored. I am overly enthusiastic in some ways because I remember when I first found out, I'm like, I could have inflatable unicorns walking down with us and we can do all these other things. And I'm like starting to think, I'm like, and we need to make sure that like everyone knows like they're seen. And I'm getting into this because I'm privileged and honored to be one of the 2 Grand Marshals, especially with Chris. Like he's an amazing individual and has been such a benefit to the community, the LGBTQ plus community, as well as Middletown community and so forth. It was joyous, and it was like, let's do this in more of a, we're here, we're going to be loud, and this is going to show how much pride we have. And I'm ready to do this, and I'm ready to uplift and empower and ignite that passion that every single person is going to specifically have. And that is just something I really can't wait to do. And I hope when speaking with Chris and Bree in the Middletown Pride group, we're going to make sure that this is going to be a pride that Connecticut is not going to forget about.
I do not want to out you here publicly, but I have seen you in the inflatable unicorn costume.
Yes, yes. You've had your picture by my alter ego Tapioca. I actually have an entourage, other unicorns that may make an appearance. It can't be scorching out because those outfits are greenhouses. And I don't need random marching unicorns to be passing out in the Middletown.
There is nothing that will bring a pride celebration down quicker than dead unicorns.
Yeah, we don't want that to happen. But yes, usually Tapioca is my alternative, a lot quieter but very enthusiastic 9-foot tall rainbow inflatable unicorn outfit. Even at Prides, now I know how like individuals with like photos with Santa or Easter Bunny or whatever feel, because you can tell when young kids really want to come see me like, there's a unicorn, and they run up, or when their parents want them to come and see me and they're terrified and they're being like clawing at their leg and being like, we're not getting closer, and I'm in this outfit and I'm like, Don't traumatize this kid. You're dragging this kid over to me. This kid is not having fun like you're having fun right now.
You're talking about years of therapy. All right, my friend, last word goes to you.
With Middletown Pride and with any prides that happen this year, especially, are really going to step more so in the rally, protest, advocate for the community. When we hold pride, yes, it is to celebrate, it is to be joyous, and we really truly need to continue to remember that all the things that we've built up to, support groups for youth, having open dialogue and conversations, trans, queer, non-binary artists and performers and actors and actresses, and seeing cartoons that have characters who might be non-binary. We got here through our activism. We got here because of each other. And with all of this heaviness happening, we've overcome it in the past, and we are going to overcome it again. There's a lot of what I call noise of just trying to stagnate us, to keep us standing still, because they know how powerful our voices are. They know how much we can do together as a community, that they want to try to scare us into just being stagnant. And we're not going to do that. We've overcome even prior to like Stonewall, the AIDS epidemic. We've navigated hurdles together and have overcome those hurdles for individuals like myself, individuals who are going to be at Pride, to stand up, show visibility, to say, there's no fear here. I'm just like you, still paying taxes, still dealing with waiting for my coffee in the morning, that there's no fear here. It's this false sense of fear, and that I'm no different than you are. Maybe I love someone different, maybe I identify differently than you.
Maybe you have better hair.
Better hair. And truly saying, why do we want to separate ourselves when I just think about colossals, like going back to the Statue of Liberty, like, give me your tired, your poor, your hungry, your masses yearning to be free. We all came here as immigrants, outside of those who are Native American, Indigenous, yes, and I applaud them for all they've gone through, that we all are different, and we should celebrate those differences and celebrate those uniquenesses and celebrate the ability to learn from each other, to be able to hold these conversations and say, you know what? I never thought of that. Or that's a different perspective than I ever thought. And be grateful for that. And this Pride season, I am extremely grateful to be honored to be one of the Grand Marshals, and hope to cause this ripple effect of visibility so that other individuals, whether it be for visible to only one or two people, that still is massive, and that will embody and empower that next person to be more visible for the next. And that's what we're going to do.
Thanks to Ace and Chris for their time and their openness. I look forward to seeing you all in Middletown on June 7th. Next week, episode 91, I'll be joined by a panel of librarians, including the director of Middletown's own Russell Library.
Great, let's read some books. Ooh, the library is open!
Episode 92 will focus on the good works of the state's Pride centers. And finally, in episode 93, I'll be talking with members of the LGBTQ+ Justice and Opportunity Network about the evolving language of Soji. This has been Transqat. I'm Clare McCarthy. Thanks for listening, and let's talk soon.
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece.
And you've just been listening to Transqat. It is made by one of my favorite people in the world, Clare McCarthy.
Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC.
Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.
Join us on the web at transqat.com.
That's TRANSQAT.com.
QAT.com.
QAT.com.
There you'll find links to Transqat, the blog,
writing projects,
speaking engagements,
and our PayPal donations page.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monkeys.
Monies.
Your monies. Your monies.
Not monkeys.
Please consider supporting our mission with your monies. Any monkeys will be gratefully received as well.
Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
On TikTok, we are at The Real Transqat.
Want to tell your story on air?
Or ask Claire a question?
What is the deal?
She has all the answers.
Or suggest a guest or topic for an upcoming episode.
Use the contact page at the website
or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com.
crmtranscat@gmail.com.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.